All right, psychology. Here we go, talking about intelligence testing and IQ today. This is something that you guys have dealt with your entire schooling lives. You probably took your first intelligence test or IQ type test when you were in kindergarten or first grade. And if we were in class today, we'd be having a lot of conversations about, when you guys remember being separated by ability level and having IQ tests done on you, and basically ranked by your intelligence in certain areas, because it creates a lot of like good and bad experiences throughout school. So we're going to get into this, and to be honest, it has a very checkered past. This entire conversation about intelligence testing and IQ. So let's get going. It kind of starts off with Sir Francis Galton, and first thing you got to understand about Galton is the time frame in which he is in. At this point, his cousin, actually, this guy was his cousin, Charles Darwin. Sir Francis Galton and him are cousins, actually. Is coming up with a lot of his ideas of origin of species and evolution and all this kind of stuff. So the first move that is taken on intelligence testing is a very evolutionary one. It's one based on heredity, and Sir Francis Galton, among others, thought that your intelligence was basically, your heredity and your genetics that were passed on to you, and they were either superior or inferior, right? And so Sir Francis Galton would try to do intelligence testing by basically testing genetic things, even if they have nothing to do with what we think about as intelligence today. He would test things like reaction time. He would test things like muscular power and body proportions, because those were all things that were thought at the time showed very good heredity and genetics. And this whole idea is very dangerous, right? Because it did get to the point where Sir Francis Galton started pushing the idea of eugenics, and that was actually a term that he coined. And if you look up the definition of eugenics, or just Google eugenics, it is not a pretty path to go down. It is basically the idea that some people are born genetically superior and some people are born genetically inferior. And it got to the point where Sir Francis Galton, once again among others, was saying that people who had good genetics, those that were genetically superior and would obviously score very, very well on his intelligence test, should procreate, right? And they should reproduce with other people who score very high in intelligence. And we should maybe even castrate, or at least say that people who do not score high on this intelligence test and are genetically inferior should not procreate. That's kind of the ugly path that it goes down. And this is actually the very exact thing, this idea of eugenics, that Adolf Hitler will support and try to implement in Germany with the whole Aryan race during World War II. So very dangerous path to go down. This is obviously not the path that we followed with intelligence testing today. Let's see how it kind of made the transition into what we know today. It probably starts with Alfred Binet. And Alfred Binet in this particular lesson is my guy, okay? He did this for the right reasons. He was actually commissioned by the French government to identify kids who were entering school, because France had just implemented this idea that all kids have to go to school. It would be a requirement of all French children to attend school. And this was kind of overwhelming to the society, because a lot of these children had never attended school before, and their parents definitely had never attended school before. So Binet was commissioned by the French government to identify school children that were in need of assistance, right? So you see how this starts off as a good thing. We're going to identify those kids that are maybe a little bit behind, get them the help they need to catch up. So he basically set up an intelligence test that tried to measure a kid's mental age, right? And a mental age is, what are the concepts and ideas that they should know by a certain chronological age? So he made a test that basically matched up chronological age to mental age. So you could, let's say you had really good parents that taught you and read you stories and had you writing your letters and things like that from a very young age. By the time you got to, say, like a kindergarten, right? Most of your classmates are 5 years old. You might actually have a mental age of 6, because you've been taught all this stuff and had very good nurture, right? So Binet was interested in that, but he makes a prophecy here that really turns out to become true. He said this cannot become something where we label children and almost, designate them as lost causes. And that's kind of exactly what's happened in today's society is we basically give people an IQ score like it's an absolute value of their intelligence, which is not true at all. Benet's heart was really in the right place here. The French government's heart was in the right place. They were trying to identify those kids that were lagging behind their mental age and needed help catching up. So, how does this get perverted in the way it does? Well, here's how, right? Americans get a hold of it. But no, Stanford and Lewis Terman at Stanford basically takes the ideas that Binet came up with, and he comes up with the intelligent quotient test. And this is the first time that we hear the term IQ, right? IQ standing for intelligence quotient. And basically, what he did was he did exactly what Binet did not want to happen to this test. He started assigning scores to it, and he came up with an equation basically that said mental age divided by chronological age times 100 will be your IQ. So let's play this out really quickly, right? So 100 is the average IQ score. That's average intelligence, right? So if you're a 5-year-old and you take an IQ test and you score 5, that's your mental age is 5 divided by chronological age, which is also 5. That's 1, right? Times 100. 100, your average intelligence. But let's go back to that example I gave you earlier. Let's say somebody is above their mental age. Okay, let's say that somebody is a 4-year-old but has a mental age of 5, right? So 5 divided by 4, 1.25 times 100, an IQ of 125, which is above average, right? And this was basically the beginnings of us using IQ to put a value on people's intelligence. Now there are some things that the Stanford Binet test that Lewis Terman came up with had to change because obviously most of the things that Binet used this for was with little children. So when you get to age like 37, right, 37 over 36. So let's say you have a mental age of 37, chronological age of 36. That math doesn't quite even out the way that it would with kids. So they actually made some new age norms as far as what they should know at certain ages. They obviously added a superior end, and that's something that Binet had never really used or paid attention to. His whole purpose, like I said before, was helping those kids that were behind. Well, now we are going to use this to label kids that are special or gifted, right? And that's how you guys have probably seen IQ used in your lifetime is labeling people's giftedness or labeling people as behind the curve, right? So intelligence quotient is IQ. That's the IQ that you guys know and have heard of before. It is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. That is an actual, maybe the only formula in AP psychology that you have to know. And obviously 100 is considered average. The first time we associate this in the American culture is during World War I. We actually test new recruits to find out who might have suitabilities to be a general or a leader in the armed forces during World War I. So what are some modern tests of mental abilities? These are the ones that you will see today. A lot of you guys have taken tests like this before. First one I want to make you guys aware of is achievement tests and aptitude tests. These are two very different things, okay? An achievement test is basically testing what you are supposed to know. So an achievement test would be like me giving you a test over Unit 10 or Unit 11 after we've covered Unit 10 or Unit 11 material, right? It is a test over things that you are supposed to know and if you've mastered that material or not. An aptitude test is very different, okay? An aptitude test is your ability for future learning. Now, that's completely different. So an aptitude test, like the SAT or the ACT or an intelligence quotient test, is basically telling us if you will be successful in the future, expanding your learning over things that you haven't even maybe covered yet. Okay, so those aptitude tests have a very different purpose than achievement tests. And when we look at a couple things here with this chart, and we look at how IQ is associated with your scores on those aptitude tests, we should see a very positive correlation, and we do. You see that kind of upward 45-degree angle trend there with your score on an SAT test. This specific one is using your verbal and quantitative reasoning and your IQ score. So aptitude and IQ score do have a very positive correlation. And the one that we use today that is most often given to school-age children, whether it be elementary school, middle school, high school, even college, is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. Okay, and there is one that is kind of modified a little bit for children. That is the same Wechsler test, but it's specifically made for children. That has a slightly different name, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. So we have the WAIS, Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, and the WISC, Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. And these are the ones where you're given a lot of brain examples and patterns and formulas and things like that. I gave you a slight example of this earlier. I'm going to put another example just for fun, not an assignment or anything like that, for the lesson today. So check those out. See if you can get any of the answers to them. They are hard. I didn't put the answers up there. I'll share those with you next class, but just something fun to look at. So that's IQ and intelligence testing, and that's it for today.